Good morning. I am Bradley, and I'll be your service leader today. Let me mention a few things before we begin. If you are visiting us for the first time today, our greeters at the welcome table by the door can help you get oriented if you have any questions. If you have little ones, our greeters can show you the way to the nursery, which is available during the service for children ages 6 and younger. Our services are filmed and posted onto YouTube. If you do not want to be in the video, a way to make sure of that is to sit in the perfume-free zone, which is this wedge of chairs here, or in the wedge of chairs closest to the back wall and the library. Feel free to move during the opening hymn if you'd like to, and please silence your cell phones. Our opening hymn is number 306, Sing of Living, Sing of Dying. It is in your thick gray hymnal. I will warn you, the song references suicide, so prepare yourself for that. Please rise and body your spirit and join us in singing hymn number 306, Sing of Living, Sing of Dying. I measure every grief I meet with narrow, probing eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine or has an easier size. I wonder if they bored long or did it just begin? I could not tell the date of mine, it feels so old a pain. I wonder if it hurts to live and if they have to try, and whether could they choose between, it would not be to die. I note that some, long patient gone, at length renew their smile, an imitation of a light that has so little oil. I wonder if when years have piled, some thousands, on the harm that hurt them early, such a lapse could give them any balm. Or would they go on aching still, through centuries of nerve, enlightened to a larger pain in contrast with the love? The grieved are many, I am told. There is the various cause. Death is but one, and comes but once, and only nails the eyes. There's grief of want, and grief of cold, a sort they call despair. There's banishment from native eyes, in sight of native air. And though I may not guess the kind correctly, yet to me, a piercing comfort it affords in passing Calvary. To note the fashions of the cross and how they're mostly worn, still fascinated to presume that some are like my own. Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Bradley, and I'm your service leader today. If you are with us on the internet, or if you're with us sitting in the chairs around me, we are one community united in our commitment to each other and our commitment to live out our principles in the world. Today's guest speaker is Jen Hegler. Jen is a local priestess, Death Cafe facilitator, and counselor in training. Jen's service today is about grief and how grief can build a community. But first, let us light our chalice with words from our vision statement. We work together as a church to transform ourselves, our community, and our world by sharing love, pursuing justice, and seeking wonder. We welcome you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first Sunday or your 1000th Sunday with us, we are stronger because of your presence. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, many sexualities and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Today's service is about grief. People deal with grief in different ways, and today's special music is an example of that. Frank Turner had a friend named Scott Hutchinson. Scott committed suicide in 2018 by jumping off a bridge. To honor his friend, Frank Turner wrote this song. Frank says that I still miss my friend Scott every day. His passing left such a huge hole in so many lives. I wrote the song in his honor and memory. It was hard to write and record, but I think it does the man some small justice. Please enjoy A Wave Across a Bay by Frank Turner.
I spoke with Scott last night. I was tired, but I wasn't sleeping. And despite what you think, I wasn't drinking. I was just finally ready to listen. And he was there alright. And though he'd probably kill me for saying this, given how both of us were atheists, and there it is. There must have been a moment just before you hit the water when you were filled with a sense of peace and understanding, with the wind in your hair and the light in your eyes, and you realized you were finally escaping. And somehow in that moment you miraculously missed it, like a wave across the bay, never breaking. And that's how I like to think of you, ever falling, never breaking, rolling solely out to sea and always smiling. You were always smiling. Recognize you were one of us, but you'd worked out how you could survive, at least for a while. There must have been a moment just before you hit the water when you were filled with a sense of peace and understanding, with the wind in your hair and the light in your eyes, as you realized you were finally escaping. But somehow in that moment you miraculously missed it, like a wave across the bay, never breaking. And that's how I like to think of you, ever falling, never landing. breaking. You were a wave across the bay, never breaking. Out to sea, ever falling, never landing. You were a wave across the bay, never breaking. You were a wave across the bay, never breaking. Out to sea, ever falling, never landing. You were a wave across the bay, never breaking. You were a wave across the bay, never breaking. You were always smiling.
Man, thank you, Karis. That was beautiful. Let's take a meditative moment. Please close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. Let it go. Hold it. Deep breath. Hold it. Let go. Hold it. Deep breath. Hold it. Let go. Picture yourself on a park bench. The hardwood is supporting your back. The birds chatting in the distance. The trees are shifting in the breeze. Think of someone whose death you still grieve. Imagine that person, that animal, whoever it is, sitting right next to you on that park bench. Give them a big hug. Tell them everything you wanted to tell them. Thank them for everything they've done. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. Let go. Hold it. Deep breath. Hold it. Let go. Hold it. Deep breath. Hold it. Let go. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Come to this community with all that you are. Your joys and your concerns are welcome here. We share our moments of joys and sorrows with us through using these candle cards. If you are with us in person, or by emailing the Reverend at minister@hvууc.org with the words candle card in the subject line. Make sure to indicate whether or not you would like the card read aloud during the service, which is still being broadcast publicly on YouTube. I got a few cards. A card from Noel says it's a candle of joy for the wonderful, tasty, delicious Wednesday night suppers, and especially for the Indian feast, compliments of Ramesh. She puts in parentheses, applause, please. A card from Emmy Johnson. She says, after a ton of hard work, I graduated from Northeast State cum laude on May 7th. I will be going on to ETSU in the fall, and I'm so excited for the next part of this journey. And a card from Bob, Candle of Joy, to all who organized and participated in Friday's Peace Jam, sending love and intention for the end of the 114 wars on our planet. Peace for all. May peace prevail on earth. And a card of sorrow for me, because for all it's Memorial Day weekend. One of my best friends is a veteran, and he hates this weekend because he has to remember all his dead friends. So a card for all those veterans who are grieving this weekend. If you wish to light your own silent candle, approach the side of the table that is closest to you, and the closest candle keeper will assist you. Please light the candles at the back of the table first, so no one has to reach over and open flame. If you wish for us to light a candle for you, please raise your hand until I acknowledge you, and I will ensure a candle is lit for your intention. And because our community is so much larger than those of us who are just in the building this morning, we will light a candle to hold space for those who are not physically present in the building, but are ever in our hearts and minds. That remains unspoken in our hearts and minds. Our special music was A Wave Across a Bay, so I decided our reading should also be about a wave. In this case, a little wave. On the sparkling surface of the blue-gray ocean near the Scottish coastline, a wave skimmed along under the midday sun. The wave enjoyed riding the currents and chatting with nearby waves as she cruised across the vast sea. And one day, she spied something strange and menacing in the distance. A dark streak appeared on the horizon, where before she had seen only water without end. Soon the muted shapes of craggy cliffs came into view on the shoreline stretching out ahead. The wave had never seen land before. She stared at the rugged coast with a mixture of fascination and fear as she watched wave after wave rush towards the shore and dashed upon the rocks, leaving only wisps of white foam to wash up on the beach. Her fear turned to horror when she realized that she, together with all the other waves, was destined to die in the crashing surf ahead. Terrified, she struggled with all her might to turn around and swim back toward others in the open sea, but it was no use. She kept moving towards that beach. She was soon exhausted by her futile attempts as she relentlessly current pushed her closer and closer to the deadly rocks. She wondered if anyone had discovered a way to avoid dying on the rocks and began to ask the other waves whether they knew of any solution to this deadly dilemma. Most thought she was foolish. Be practical, they said. You must learn to accept your fate, however dreadful it is. A wise old wave, traveling from a far-away sea, happened to observe her anguish. The old wave looked at her, not with pity, but with compassion and understanding. When she spotted the wise old wave, she noted his peaceful expression and felt the contentment he somehow radiated, even in the face of death. "Are you not afraid of dying?" she asked. "No," he said calmly. "Don't you see that we will soon be thrown upon the rocks and die on the shore ahead?" "Yes, I see," he replied. "Then do you believe you will go to the great ocean after you die?" "Maybe, maybe not." Mystified by his evasiveness, she asked, "Then what do you believe?" "Nothing." "Then why aren't you afraid of dying?" "Because I know I will not die." Bewildered, she screamed, "Are you crazy? Of course you will die. We will all die. No one can survive the rocky shore ahead." "Yes, that is true. All waves will certainly die on the shore," he said. "Then you too will die," she insisted. "I will not die because I am not a wave." She began to wonder if the old man was a little crazy. "You certainly look like a wave." "Yes, what you see is a wave, but there is more to you and me than waves generally think." "What do you mean?" "Waves are born, they live for some time, and when they reach the shore, they die. That is an undeniable fact about our lives. Yet this is not the whole truth. You say you are a wave, but are you not also water? Clearly, you are both wave and water." "But," she interjected, "even if I am water, I'm still going to die. As you swelled from the tiny wavelet to your present size, the water, which is your essence, never changed. First you were water in the form of a wavelet. Now you are water in the form of a full-grown wave. Even before you were born from the ocean, the water you are already existed. And when your present form is destroyed on the shore, as water, you will continue to exist, utterly unchanged. So, my dear one, you were never born, nor will you ever die, because you are water. What difference does it make whether your present form as a wave survives or not?" The wave reflected on the old wave's teachings. They seemed to resonate within. Somehow, their truth seemed obvious, self-evident. Then a cloud of doubt swept over her when she remembered her conversation with pious waves. "What about the great ocean?" she asked. "How do I get there?" "Water," the wise wave replied, "is the essence of you, the essence of me, and of every other wave in the ocean. Water pervades all. The great ocean, too, must certainly be pervaded by water. And the same water that pervades all, including the great ocean, is the water that is your essence. You need not go to the great ocean, because the great ocean is already within you." These words stunned her like thunderclaps. She realized how misdirected her search had been. What she had sought so desperately was already within her. All along, the seeker was the sought. Her fear and anxiety vanished. A peaceful stillness filled her completely. She surveyed the ocean and saw only water in so many forms, small and large. She studied the old wave who had so patiently helped her and realized that she was the same water as he. On the rocks of the Scottish coastline under the clear blue sky, the little wave was shattered into thousands of tiny droplets soaring high into the air, all brilliantly reflecting the sun as they fell in a graceful arc and disappeared into the pebble beach. In the crushing surf, the wave surrendered her waviness, but remained forever as the water pervading all. Ladies and gentlemen, oh, thank you. And now I introduce Jen Hegler.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jen. I'm sure I gave quite the first impression when I had to try to light the chalice twice. I come to you today to talk about grief. Before we get to the meat of it, though, I'm curious. So, a little bit about me. Yes, I'm a priestess. Yes, I'm a counselor in training. I also spent over a decade working with children and youth in public schools and summer camps. So please know, we're going to start it off with a little audience participation. Yay! So, we've been here for, 30 minutes talking about grief and singing about grief and thinking about grief. So I want to know, what does grief mean to you? What comes to mind? And feel free to speak out if called to do so. Even though I'm not a teacher anymore, you don't have to raise your hand. So what does grief mean? What comes to mind? Loss, love with nowhere to go. Anything else? Emptiness. Heaviness. Confusion. Ooh, that's a good. Regret. Guilt. Rebirth. Ooh, I like that one. Somebody read my notes already. Not really. Unacceptance. What? Transition. So, you're all right. And depending on who you ask, you're all wrong as well. Grief is all of those things, and none of those things. It's not an event. It's not even a feeling, but it's a process. At its core, grief is the adjustment to a loss. Typically, people think of moving on after someone dies. But what they fail to realize is that grief can follow any loss. Raise your hand if someone you love has died. Okay, if you've had a friendship or relationship end, if you had to leave a job or start a new one, move a house, switch towns, get a pet, get married, if you've had any sort of transition in your life where the possibilities weren't there anymore, that's grief. There are little griefs and there are big griefs. But grief can happen anytime you lose the possibility of what could have been. That doesn't mean you're making a bad choice. That just means you really can't have it all. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That is human. Grief is deeply, deeply human. But the trick is, it makes you feel alien. I have been privileged for over a year to work in a volunteer capacity facilitating a death cafe. Now, that sounds a lot fancier than it is, all right? The basis of a death cafe is people sit around, they drink tea, eat snacks, sometimes they cry, sometimes they curse, sometimes they get up and walk out of the room. But it's leaving a space for these conversations about grief and loss and death. Because we live in a society where we can talk to anyone across the world, but don't you dare miss your grandma for more than 3 days because you've got to get back on the clock. Grief can be so deeply isolating with all these messages that we have to sanitize it and hide it away. Those of us who grieve, this may feel familiar to some of you, we tend to want to hide ourselves away sometimes too. Oh, I'm too needy. I can't be there. I don't want to eat. I don't want to bother my friends. Those are all things that are so common when you're dealing with feelings and adjustments that you feel like you have no control over. I don't want to minimize how deeply personal and individual grief can be. It is a universal concept. In fact, there are people who have devoted their entire career to the study of grief and grieving and loss. So I'm going to take a break from the feelings. Y'all are going to learn today. So, many of you have probably heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right? 5 stages of dying: anger, denial, grief, bargaining, acceptance, and then depending on who you ask, there's a 6th one, right? Forget about that. She's wonderful. We love her, right? But her work was with people who were dying. William J. Worden worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. He focused on those of us who are still here and what we do. The process for grievers is not about what you feel, it's about how you live. So very briefly, I'm going to tell you about the 4 tasks of mourning, right? Before I do, I'm going to explain to you, this is on purpose. Because a part of grieving is being in the emotions and feeling it, right? But another part of it is getting up and going to work and paying your bills and going to school. So you're going to notice we're going to go back and forth between the feelings and the process, much like grief. And if at any point you need to get up and walk out, please feel free, because this is a big, heavy topic. And even having a room full of people to share it with, the weight can be so heavy. So please take care of yourselves. So, back to the tasks. There are 4 of them. They sound simple, but they're not for anyone who's ever been through it. The first task sounds obvious, right? You have to accept the reality of the loss. Seems obvious. I was at my father's bedside when he stopped breathing. I'm the one who got the nurse and said, "He's gone. We need to call a code." But there were still times for the next few weeks, and I know I'm not alone in this, where I would think, I haven't heard from him in a while. I wonder what's up there. You might still get the urge to call your Nana at holidays, or to email your friend, or to pull out photo albums, right? And wonder why there aren't any new pictures. Accepting the reality is twofold. There's knowing, logically, upper brain, right, prefrontal cortex, they're gone. But then there's the deeper knowing, the grokking, for those of you who are Battlestar Galactica fans. But the understanding, that feeling that they're gone. Which means I've got to figure out what to do next. The next task is to process the pain. And that can go back and forth. Sometimes people do it at funerals. Sometimes people do it at bedsides. I'm probably not alone in the fact that I've done it in the baking aisle of the grocery store when a certain song comes on, right? The feelings can hit like a wave. Sometimes you're ready for them, sometimes you're not. The third step is adjusting to a new world without that person you lost. That's just one sentence, right? But I just heard somebody make a noise like, that's big, right? What does that mean? If we had Thanksgiving at Nana's and Nana isn't here, whose house do we go to? Who's going to be the one to help the mothers with their new babies? Who's going to make the deviled eggs at the potluck? I mean, that's not my Nana. She was not a cook. She was from upstate New York, so. But yeah, you have to readjust and figure out which tasks are going to get picked up and which aren't. And there's no wrong way to do this, in spite of the messages you might have been told. The fourth and final step kind of ties things up in a bow, but not like a professional Belks at Christmas time bow, like a 5-year-old learning to tie their shoes bow. The fourth step is finding ways that you can build and maintain the memory and honor the person you've lost while you move in to the next stage of your life, to keep on living, and to know that you living is not a disservice to those you've lost. In fact, it's a way their legacy can carry on. So these steps sound simple, right? They're kind of loaded, but they sound simple. The thing about them is there's no timeline. Some of you may have realized that on your own. And you can move back and forth. And it's all okay. It may not feel okay, but it's okay. I appreciate the fact that you all start your service by lighting the chalice and the candles. One of the things that I do at every Death Cafe is I have a candle. It's at the library, so I can't have open flame, but I have a battery-powered candle that I light, and I always tell this story. When my maternal grandmother, Joanne Craddock, was in the hospital before she was put on home hospice, at the nurse's station on the wing, there was a candle. And if the candle was lit, that meant someone was dying. They were transitioning, and their loved ones were there with them to witness it. The understanding was, if that candle was lit, you would be quiet and respectful. Well, for those of you who spent any amount of time in a hospital, you know it's a very liminal space, and time doesn't exist, and it does weird stuff to your mind, right? So we got a little slap happy. And my brother and I couldn't stop laughing. And it wasn't that like fun, like, oh, ha ha, funny prank laugh. It was that like, oh, this is awful, and I don't know what to do with it laugh. And I remember my grandfather got so annoyed because he thought we were being rude, but really it's like we're just doing what humans do. And so I light that candle every time before Death Cafe. 1, to bring up Joanne and Harold. And 2, because we right now are in a liminal space. And it is my personal hope that as I die, I hear laughter in the other room. I want there to be joking. I want there to be love. So I always light a candle at Death Cafe to hold that liminal space. But instead of reminding you all to be quiet, this liminal space is a space where you can laugh and scream and feel whatever you need to. So, enough about the individuality of grief, right? We're here to build community. I want to take a minute. The counselor in me is like, do a somatic check-in. I want to take a minute, and I want you to check in with yourself. We're going to do a quick breathing exercise, and it could get a little loud. So if you have sensitive ears, you might want to get out earplugs, cover your ears, something like that. We're going to take 3 deep breaths, okay? And each time we're going to breathe in and hold it, and I'm going to give you the directions for the next step, okay? All right, so close your eyes if you'd like. Or not, it's whatever. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to hold it. And I want you to picture the heaviness that many of you probably feel in your chest right now. Maybe it's a tension in your shoulders, a tension in your jaw. I want you to push that out with your out breath. All right, breathe in again, and hold it. And this time, I want you to just picture any other tension that maybe you didn't get rid of the last time, right? Some of it's deep. This can bring up old stuff. I want you to push that out now, too. Some of you are getting what I'm ramping up to. Third breath. I want you to breathe in as much as you can. I want you to hold it, and when you let it out, make whatever noise, laugh, scream, groan, whatever. It can be a sigh, I don't care, whatever you need. Go! So, come on back. You're not rid of me yet. I just wanted to give you all a minute. So now, to grief as community. I want you to think about someone you love. They can be someone who's here or not, living or dead. I want you to think of a time they asked you for help. Maybe it's putting on a bracelet, maybe it's moving, or a family dinner, whatever. And think about how that felt for them to ask you for help. To know that they trusted you enough to hold them for whatever they needed. And to think about what that could be like to be that person for someone else. It can be so scary when we are in the depths of our despair, when we have these conflicting emotions and grief is telling us no one wants to listen, and we have already used our 3 days off work. It can be so scary to reach out, but that doesn't make it any less valid. I've been both the griever and, in case you haven't noticed, the support person, and they're two very different roles. For the support person, reaching out at the beginning is easy, right? Right around the funeral, you send your cards, you send your messages and all of that. Oh, let's do dinner, let me bring you food. You got the meal trains, right? But after the funeral, that's when the grief is the loudest. After the job loss, after your ex moves out, after you get the dog's ashes back. Once your kids all enroll in school and your youngest isn't home anymore, that's when the grief hits the hardest. Those are the times when they most need that friend who sent that card, who was that shoulder to cry on, to just reach out and be like, hey, bud, I was thinking of you. Do you want to get coffee? Or I'm going to bring you a cake. Or even, let's talk. One of the things that I've heard over and over from people who are grieving, that I've had the sacred honor of sitting with, is just that invitation. The opportunity, once the dust has settled, to talk about it, or sometimes to talk about anything else. Yes, my dad died, but can we please talk about how the Dodgers always choke in the postseason? Really, can we talk about that later? But giving that space and knowing that it's gonna be awkward. And that's okay. Being human is awkward. And being a human with big feelings, doubly so, right? It is so helpful when you are reaching out to someone who has experienced a loss to go beyond, let me know if you need anything. Quick show of hands. Who has ever gotten that message and didn't know what they needed at the time? Yeah. This is an opportunity to build sustainable community. To say, you know what? I am not going to make you a casserole because I love you, but I'll watch your kids. Or to say, you know what? I know your dad always washed your car. I'll do it for you. To just be there in the ways that you can. Because while this person's life has changed, it's still your friend, it's still the person you love. And if you are the one who is grieving, it can be so hard to reach out and say, you know what? I've forgotten to eat for a day and a half. To say, I love my kids, but I need a break. To say, I love my new job, bless you, but I miss the purpose that I had with my old one. But your friends are there for you. And building a community means sometimes you get to help carry the load, and sometimes you're the one who needs to be carried. Neither part is more or less valid. And they are all equally important. Sitting with someone who's grieving is a big task. It's a big ask to be that person, to help someone move through this phase of life that maybe they didn't picture, or this phase of life that went completely sideways. But if we band together and each do what we can, it is a brilliant opportunity to model love and support and to build a community even on our darkest days. Today's musical gift came from a place of pain and grief. I know I'm not the only one who was crying. I had my tissues ready. I knew what song this was. Frank Turner wrote that song about his best friend, who he loved deeply and missed. He translated that enduring love and compassion into a gift that Karis then shared with us today. He took his grief and transmuted it. His final act of love for Scott was to picture him in his best moment, to capture what he wanted: freedom and release. I tell anyone who will listen that A Wave Across a Bay is one of the most beautiful love songs I've ever heard. And then they listen to it and they question a lot of things I say to them. But in what may be the most poignant words to come out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what is grief if not love persevering? Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Let's go ahead and extinguish the chalice now. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have noticed that sometimes the parking lot is very crowded on Sundays, and it's so crowded, in fact, that people with physical disabilities are having to walk too far to get into the building. We are going to try and find a more permanent and better solution for this, but in the meantime, if you have a good body and you can handle it, or if you don't have to deal with small children, please park in the lower lot or just farther away from the church. The lower lot is, as soon as you pull into the church, you take an immediate right. Do not hesitate. Until we find a better solution for that. Also, Women's Night is on June 7th at 6:30 p.m. at the church. Anyone who identifies as a woman is welcome to attend. Come be energized by the support of other women. Sharing of snacks and libations are always welcome, but it is not required to bring anything. More information on the website. We are going to have a rock opera here on June 28th. The name is called Transposition. Transposition, the rock opera, is written by Wendy Harrell and performed by Chameleon Red. It is the story of a young Appalachian trans musician's struggle with the questions of identity, spirituality, and success. A conversation about LGBT representation in media will follow. If you're interested, more details are on our website. We are still in need for volunteers to work on the HVUC booth at the Blue Plum Festival. The dates for this event are Friday, June the 7th, and Saturday, June the 8th. See Rachel to sign up for a time slot. Rachel, there. Today, I want you all to do something during coffee hour. Instead of chatting with the usual group you chat with, look around and find someone you don't know well. If you feel like this church is your home, please be a hospitable host. Walk over to that person, say hello, and chat with them a few minutes. It can take courage to visit us for the first time, to be the new face. Don't let them be brave alone. Offer a helping hand. Thank you. You can learn more about our opportunities for fellowship, justice work, and working together by visiting our website at hvuc.org and checking out our news and events sections. Our closing hymn for this month is hymn number 1007 in the thin blue hymnal. There's a river flowing in my soul, number 1007. This is also the time where we will pass out the offering plate. The contributions that you make to us during this offering supports the ways that we can build each other up within this community and also gives us the resources we need to stretch out into the wider world to make a positive impact. If you're making a pledge payment, please mark it as such, and thank you so much for your contributions. Please rise with us in body or spirit for our closing hymn, There's a River Flowing in My Soul, number 1007. Today's benediction comes from a very old wave, Uncle Iroh. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place. Have a great Sunday, have a great week, and yay, church!
How in that moment you miraculously missed it, like a wave across the bay, never breaking. And that's how I like to think of you, ever falling, never breaking, rolling solely out to sea and always smiling.